Mr. Duncan, at 6 o'clock, you think we're ready? All right. We will call the first committee meeting to order, which is the Recreation Committee. Mr. Matney, Mr. Reynolds, and myself are here as well as our Recreation Director and our City Administrator. First is public comment. Do we have any here in the chambers or anyone online? Okay. Second is reading and approval of the minutes. What is the pleasure of the committee?
I make a motion they be submitted, Chairman.
I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. We'll now move on to reports from our Recreation Director, Bart Cumlander.
It's all good. We're wrapping up with our youth sports. Finished up this past month. We'll start our football in July, and then we have our fall sports still signing up, fall baseball, soccer, and football. End of July is probably when we'll start football, and we will monitor the heat index for them to get where they start practicing out there. So numbers are a little bit down in football, but we're trying to get those picked back up. They need to be fully staffed at Sports Center now. We filled the billing coordinator's position, but we did lose, as you probably saw in your weekly report, Greg Beeman. He just had some family stuff going on, and so he is he'll be, well, last week was his last week, and we're going through applications, and Mr. Putton is going to give it to me and the staff, and we'll start going through them. He's doing phone interviews this week. That's what he said. And so that's pretty much it. So we're shifted some staff up there to from the rec department, and me and Willie are going up there as well, but shifted some staff up there so we won't be shorthanded. We're losing Jimmy Crawford as well. He's retiring for good, I think, this time. So he finishes up, I think, next week is his last day, and so he done a good job for us and wish him well. So if you got any questions, free to ask.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Matney.
I'm not going to make any old jokes about you going up to the senior center, so don't worry.
I'm a year away and I'm eligible. So
what do you attribute the numbers in football being down for this year?
I think it's a mixture. It's been going down. Probably 5 to 7 years ago, we had like 4 teams in each age group. I think COVID did a little bit for those numbers to go down. And also I think it's getting some bad press just because of the head injuries that people are having. And it's just more sports for folks to do. Kids play baseball about year round. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think our rec departments offer more programs. We didn't have soccer. We don't do flag football the same time we do tackle. We do that in the spring. So I think that's a mixture of both, maybe to answer your question.
With regards to the senior center, are you going to have to cancel any programs in the interim?
We will not cancel any programs. We will continue on as we always have.
All right. Any other things before we move on? You're going to stay up here anyways because we're talking.
No, sir, I don't have anything else.
Okay. All right. So on our agenda, there's no unfinished business. With new business, we have 2 discussions, one on the Cultural Center Park designation and one on the naming of the bridge over 385. Well, obviously, we'll take these one by one. If you would like to give us some input on what we're looking for from the Cultural Center Park designation to begin.
If it's okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll handle that one. So
Sounds good.
the question came to me recently about the official name of the playground, the shelter there at City Center Drive behind the Cultural Center next to the Sports Center. And the question that came up, it was because of an article that was in the paper about and referred to the playground and shelter there as a park. So the question came up, did we officially designate this as a park? And apparently this was a topic of this committee 3 years ago, was to whether or not to designate it as a park. Our city ordinance does have a specific list of requirements or rules for parks. And I can actually put those up on the screen as well. And I believe the one that may have led to kind of the suspension or tabling of this item before was the fact that we do use that area in our cultural center, city center drive area for our Amped Up Fridays and other city events where there's alcohol present. And one of our rules for that, for parks, are that alcohol is not to be consumed at the park. So let me pull this up real quick and you'll see it on your screen. So in our section 30 dash 3, it says no person in a park shall have brought alcoholic beverages into such park, nor shall any person drink alcoholic beverages at any time in the park. So if council wanted, and the committee and then council wanted to move forward with officially calling that space a park, we may want to amend this particular section to add a statement right after the final part before the period, something to the effect of, except for city-sponsored or organized events. With that change, then it still prohibits alcohol consumption at any of the parks, including that one, so long as it's not part of an organized city event. And the rest of the rules are pretty much universal for all of our parks. They basically, we have dogs permitted in public parks, but there's dog rules, and then interferences with permittees, and then operation of motor vehicles, littering. It also talks about you got to follow the rules and regulations, to which, Mr. Bart, did you get a picture of the rules that were out there? Do we have those rules posted?
I don't believe there are any. I got so busy with summer camp.
That's okay.
Today,
But
so I'm
essentially,
trying to get that for you.
we're treating that as though it is a park for all intents and purposes for rules. So this was just an opportunity to bring this item back up for discussion at the committee level to see, is there an interest in changing the status of that? And if so, we would need to then modify this section here to address the particular difference with this facility than our other facility.
Before I start going into asking my questions, I'm going to defer to Mr. Matney and Mr. Reynolds, who have served here before and may know why you had this conversation 3 years ago and it was tabled. Do you guys have any insight on that?
Well, he's exactly, that's exactly right, and why that happened, because we do have the ordinance that separates alcohol use in parks versus what we have over at the cultural center for city events. And I think that if we're able to modify the ordinance to allow that, and to allow for city events, that's great. I think we probably would need to flesh it out just a little bit more, because the cultural center is also rented by private parties where alcohol is allowed. And sometimes those events include the rear cultural center grounds and the amphitheater, where again, alcohol is served. So I don't think it's quite as simple as us just waving a magic wand or doing a one-line ordinance amendment to affect that. I think we probably just need to be very deliberate and deliberative about it to make sure that we don't have any unintended consequences if we reclassify it as a park.
And we absolutely could flesh that out and give it more meat in a simple one-line. Absolutely, we could do that.
And the intent would be with this section 30-3, that it would only pertain to that one particular park and that we're not making some universal policy regarding alcohol at all parks.
Right. This would be just the exception, that location.
I think as I recall, Chairman, we even had the discussion about where the park line begins and the culture center ends, and do we have this ordinance only applies to this big circular area, not over here. So certainly fleshing it out I'd have no problem with. If there's a way to designate it as that, then I'd have no problem with looking at ways to do that, Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Chairman, if the committee so pleases, what we could do is we could work on some language at the staff level and including a map, a diagram of the area, and then bring that back for further discussion in the next meeting.
I think that would be great. And refresh my memory also, this predates you. But I know that there was a conversation about lines drawn on where alcohol could be served even for city events. Did we ever finalize that? I do not recall that we ever did. But I remember having that conversation.
There's a map in the original ordinance. As a matter of fact, that's the reason why our current beer and wine vendor is not on the other side of City Center Drive this year as opposed to the beginning of last year, because the way that the line was drawn, it kind of cut City Center Drive in half. So alcohol would not be allowed over on that side, but it is over on the side closest to the amphitheater. So those lines exist on a map. I don't have a copy of it.
Well,
I could find one.
Yeah.
JR knows where it is.
we've got it. Yeah.
So the issue was following the existing policy that was already on the books, not necessarily extending the line. Right?
You rephrase that?
Sure. When we had this discussion before, it was about enforcing the existing guidelines, the existing lines that are on the books, not necessarily extending those lines to allow for alcohol consumption in a greater area.
Yeah, correct. It all boiled down to alcohol is not allowed in parks. So if we technically designate that a park, then it falls underneath the section 30-3 that has the strict prohibition, as opposed to it not being a park, but it being a city facility, where lines have been drawn on a map that outline where alcohol can and cannot be served on the confines of that parcel.
Got it. Okay. Mr. Duncan, do you need any official vote of any kind from?
No, sir, we'll just continue to work at this staff level and bring back some ideas at a future meeting.
Is there any other questions regarding this matter? Hearing none, we'll move on to the discussion of naming of the bridge over 385. Page 5 in your packet. Is that you, Mr. Duncan, or is that Mr. Cumberlander?
I think Mr. Cumberland is going to start, and I might jump in to help out.
Sounds good.
Yes, sir. Mr. Duncan came to me a week or so ago and want to name the bridge. It's not, there's no name for it. Everybody calls it the Bridgeway Station. What we did back in 2000, when we built Sunset Park, we got the community involved and let them, and I can't remember how I think they got out with a Gazette. That was 23 years ago. So, but they got the community involved in how to name the park at Sunset. So I told Seth, I said, well, that's how we did that. If you want to do something maybe like that, or maybe get y'all's input on an idea on what to do it. It is, it is going to be a part of the Swamp Rabbit Trail. It is tied to it. Some people say it's not. So I'm just getting some input from y'all on what y'all think we should name it. I've been a big part of that, and so just trying to get council's input on what to name the bridge.
Mr. Duncan, I know you and I briefly talked about this, that there could be potential naming rights down the line, but for now, we're just looking at what do we call it so that the press can call it something basic.
Exactly. We've not called it anything officially, any type of bridge other than a pedestrian bridge. And so, yeah, this would not jeopardize any type of naming rights. We still would do that down the road if council so pleased. This is really just to kind of inform that and make sure that we're not going off in left field by soliciting input from, of course, council, the community, and come back to the committee and then to council with 3 to 5 naming options that we could call it, because we were in the process of ordering the plaque, the dedication plaque for the bridge, and we weren't quite sure what to call it yet. So I think the initial idea was, we'll leave it blank and we'll worry about that later. But I was like, well, let's just start that process and really engage the community in a way that hopefully that, we're going to get some crazy things. We might get a few, inspirational ideas too. Council members may have some great ideas, and we're just going to put them all in the hopper and then come back with some ideas back to full council.
I can't ask the same question of Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Matney, because now we're talking about 2000 and that predates all of us, I believe. So do you have any ideas in terms of what worked, what didn't work back in 2000?
you got some people that were against something, okay? So you would get some off the wall stuff. So you have to kind of be careful when you throw that out there. And, but no, to answer your question, I don't remember. I just remember, I think it went out in an article in a paper, and I submitted to City Hall and they did it that way, if I remember correctly. So 23 years ago, so I apologize.
It's quite all right. That's quite all right. What questions does the committee have?
Mr. Chairman, I think all I'd ask is if you were looking to, what would be your process in trying to solicit public's input? You're talking just website post, Twitter feed, what do you?
I believe so, yes, sir. Obviously, we want to engage social media. We could even put out a press release and have Lauren draft something up, so that way we can alert the media. The media landscape's changed a little bit in the last 23 years since last time we did this, so we may get some print traction, but I think alerting the news, and I think the news is kind of a fun story, says, hey, Mauldin is seeking your help to help name its new pedestrian bridge over 385. And I think it could be a good PR piece. It shows that the trail's almost, or the bridge is almost done, and that we're really thinking about where we take that into the future. Yeah, kind of an all media modes approach to getting some good ideas. We're gonna get some funny and some weird things along the way too, but I'm confident we'll find something that council can rally behind and in the community as well.
To that point, I would imagine if we were to hold such a, it's not really necessarily a contest, it's just we're naming,
Right.
right? Is that at the end of the day, none of those names could be chosen.
That's quite possible. The council could have something else.
Yeah, I think back to University of South Carolina Upstate when they were looking at their logo. They used to be called the Running Rifles, and they were written up in 1998 in Newsweek magazine as one of the worst mascots in the United States. They decided to change it, and when they changed it, they solicited response, and of course they tallied. At the end of the day, the three names that was brought up by the public, they went with none of them. They ended up calling themselves the Spartans, and it's worked out well for them. So I just would be mindful that we do not want to end up with something that's not a good representation. That we still, at the end of the day, council can make that decision with staff.
Absolutely. Yeah. Council holds the keys to this. So it ultimately will select the name.
And there is a council person behind Mr. Cumberlander who I know does not like to talk about naming rights when it comes to whether it be the Swamp Rabbit or something else. So we still have a trail to name too.
We do.
So we still have that coming down the line as well.
And we're working on ideas on that too. We weren't ready for the committee meeting.
Any other questions from the committee or thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would, my recommendation would be that we ask the recreation department to do what community development did as it relates to the public art trail, and that is bring us a plan. How would what would this selection process look like? Who all would be involved? How would it work? How do we manage expectations? So that we know what the steps would be within the program.
We go ahead and preempt and make sure Mayor Merritt Bridge doesn't come up? Is that where we do that, or you make sure that happens?
I've heard from several members that we don't necessarily want to name after a person, living or deceased. But we're going to try to stay away from that. But I think we're seeking community input because we know that there's a lot of things that make Mauldin great, and we would like to hopefully have that. My desire is to have that reflected in the bridge system. That's uniquely Mauldin, as much as possible.
What is the timeline that you're looking at on this?
I didn't really have one. I think we were just going to start opening it up the next week or two, and then get some feedback. And then the bridge is not slated to be done till early August, and we haven't picked a ribbon cutting ceremony date. So we've still got some time to work. And Bridgeway Station itself won't be kind of fully operationalized, although we do have residents moving in. We've got all the retail and commercial entities building out their suites now, but we don't really see Bridgeway being fully ready to go until later this fall. So it might be something that we coincide at the same time, but I think now's the time we start planning and preparing for this idea, getting those ideas together, and then ultimately getting a name or a series of names in front of council for consideration.
And Mr. Chairman, I think that planning makes sense. I want to make sure that we don't have a ribbon cutting to a bridge to nowhere. So if the bridgeway isn't open, and it's not bringing people from one side of the interstate to the other as it is designed to do, and, connect the trail, whatever the name of the trail becomes. I don't know that we want to open it until that point, because then that becomes a story in and of itself.
I would agree with that. Although my daughter and I did walk out there, whether we were supposed to or not, and we were able to see the bridge.
So, no act, like the previous item, no action in particular. We just wanted to get some feedback from the committee. And I think we've got some good ideas that we'll start working on an official plan, bridge naming process.
Cool.
And we'll get back with you on that.
All right. Any other thoughts, comments, concerns? All right. Thank you, Mr. Comlander. Thank you, Mr. Duncan. That ends new business. Our next is public comment. Is there anyone else here or online? I see no. Any committee concerns? Hearing none, we need a need for adjournment.
Move for approval, or move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. We are adjourned at 6:21. Coming up next is economic planning and development.
Matthew, okay, just sit. Thank you, Chairman.
Bridge face is the leading contender right now.
Mr. Duncan, you ready? All right, calling EPD together, or to order at 6:22 PM on the 3rd of July. Everybody's here. Do we have anybody that wants to participate in public comment? Going once, going twice. What do I hear on reading and approval of minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Got a second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. That brings us to reports, communications, or excuse me, the reports, communications from city officers. JR.
Hello, sir, members of committee, glad to be here with you tonight. Because it says so on the board budget review, the budget is pristine. I have not poked a hole in it yet, so we are good for this new fiscal year. Going into programming, Amped Up Fridays is going well. I got a few of them left. July 7th, we have the Holiday Band. July 14th is Jamie Wright Band. July 21st is the Entertainers. Then July 28th is the Catalinas, which we will have fireworks, sponsored by United Community Bank. I believe all members of city council have had a chance to stand in front of a crowd or been offered the invitation. Anybody not signed up for a date yet? Does anybody want to sign up for a date yet to speak to the crowd? You got the next two? Frank has the next two. Good. Anyway, if you would like to, please let me know. I am the hype man for July 21st. I'm happy to give up my spot if you would like to hype the crowd in my stead. Excuse me. Kind of picking up where Seth mentioned off from the pedestrian bridge, the trail, from the notes that I have, the paving should start next week on it. Rain delays occurred after the email was sent, so take that with a grain of salt. Rain may have softened the soil a little bit for much paving. And then as scheduled, the electrical on the bridge should be done by August the 4th, at which point it should be done from that side. Check your local listings from Mr. Deerhog on the inspections and permitting from that. But as Seth mentioned, we're looking at doing a ribbon cutting whenever it's the appropriate time for that. As far as business development goes, we still have a lot of interest coming in. Seth, David, and I have met with a number of developers who have come in. The key thing that they keep on saying is that they don't know where interest rates are going, how their financing is going to be. A lot of people have a lot of money to spend. They've got to think about how to deploy that strategically. from that side of it. So business is still in full swing. We're still open for business, still hearing from a lot of people. Matter of timing and location for some of the major parcels that we're pushing. That's a quick report on what's happening in our committee or in our department.
Any questions for Mr. Charles? All right, we have, oh, go ahead, Mr. Crowley.
Just real quick, but multiple people ask me, the building that caught fire, right beside Kellett's, that they rebuilt, do you know if we're rebuilding? Do you know anything, have they talked to you about any future, what they're gonna do there?
I've reached out to the owner of it, Miss Knight, and she says that she's letting her granddaughter handle all the decisions. So Miss Knight says she is open to selling. The granddaughter says she is not. So we have a little bit of a conflict on that side. Mr. Deerhog is the one who's dealing with all the inspections and permitting from that side. So he'll have more information about that.
I
but
just get asked that about once a week, it seems like, so.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
There's an interest.
Anything else for JR? All right, don't go too far. We have no unfinished business, but that brings us to our new business, which is the Business License Incentive Program Ordinance Change. JR.
Yes, as mentioned, we have a lot of interest. And one of the things that we have contemplated as city staff is that the business license incentive abatement program, it has some restrictions on it that may hinder some projects they're working on. The most major one, the most poignant one, is that our corporate headquarters definition has it where a corporate headquarters must exist in South Carolina and 2 other states. We have a number of companies that only exist in 1 other state besides South Carolina. So what we're trying to do is give the city council flexibility in 2 places. 1, to redefine corporate headquarters so it's operational in South Carolina and 1 other state. And then we added another section that, if you scroll down there, Mr. Duncan, that says that even though there are only 2 prescribed abatement programs, that city council has the discretion to offer any alternative incentive agreement that it showed desires. So basically, you can offer this prescriptive program or choose your own adventure. So that language there adds it so that you can do such a thing. So those are the minor changes that we wanted to make to it. We didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We wanted to give you flexibility and address the corporate definition.
Any questions for JR? Mr. Crowley.
So basically, trying to understand this. So basically, we're saying if you don't have your headquarters here, we're okay with it. Be in South Carolina, can be outside of South Carolina. Just has to be here in 1 other state to be considered to get this.
I believe the language does say it has to be in South Carolina and 1 other state. And so the only incentive we tied is obviously if they're being permanent in Mauldin, it would be in Mauldin, that side. I believe that's what the language says. We didn't change any of the language about I think you went back a little too far. Yeah. We didn't strip out anything about it not being in Mauldin. That's what, if I'm understanding.
No. It just, I'm trying to understand what we're trying to accomplish here.
Jason, just to go ahead and jump in very quickly, because I'm actually going to offer an amendment. So right now, the corporate definition requires it to be in located in South Carolina somewhere and 2 other states. So this would have it instead of 2 other states, only in 1 other state. I'm actually going to offer an amendment that it doesn't need to be in another state. If it is a large corporation operating in South Carolina and we want them here because of the financial benefit that they can receive, do we really care that they're in another state?
That's where I was going.
Yeah. So I'm going to offer an amendment at the appropriate time to get rid of that. Unless somebody beats me to it.
We should have it written down.
We're just talking about this, so we could change it now. If you want to make a change, if you want to suggest a change. We don't need necessarily a motion. We're just discussing this idea.
So this isn't up for,
Oh, it is. We're asking for this to be advanced to council, but we're not in a motion to adopt yet. So if you want to modify the language now, you could, because we haven't adopted. We haven't made a motion for anything yet.
Yeah, I would prefer, and Diane, please tell JR and Seth what you think. I'm in favor of striking and 2 other states, period. So it would just read, the headquarters must have responsibility for an area including South Carolina.
That's fine with me.
And I don't think that that creates any domino effect. I think the other piece is good and doesn't need to be messed with.
They want to take out including South Carolina, responsibility for South Carolina or the operations in South Carolina. Well, I'll bring back you another appropriately worded amendment.
We have a motion. Mr. Crayling.
Make a motion at this time to forward to full council the change as suggested if minutes. To change the business licensing fee abatement incentive program as discussed.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. And that's being forwarded to full council with the change that was discussed in committee. So that brings us back to public comment. Going once, going twice. Committee concerns. What do I hear on adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. And it is, we're adjourned at 6:32.
But I Oh, that was funny. All right, let's call to order our third committee meeting of the night, Public Safety Committee. Present tonight are all committee members, including myself, Mr. Allgood and Mr. Cradling. Oh, I'm out of breath from my chair. We can leave that out, Miss Miller. Chief Miller, Chief McCollum, and our Clerk of Court, Mr. Rado, are all present along with our City Administrator, Mr. Duncan. I will move to our second part of the agenda, which is public comment. Do we have any public comment in chambers or online? Seeing none, we will move to reading and approval of the minutes from June the 5th. What is committee's pleasure?
Motion to approve as submitted.
Mr. Allgood?
Second.
Second, Mr. Crayling. Any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes from June the 5th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, none opposed, motion carries unanimously. Reports from our city officers. We have Chief McCone up front, up first. Hopefully you all saw the pictures from the administrator's report on Friday. One of them you had to turn your head sideways to figure it out. It was a light fixture, by the way.
That's what I was actually going to talk with about tonight. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. We do have, it's getting to the end of it. They're still looking at the end of August, 1st September being completed. They're actually putting the flooring stuff in. They've got the machinery and stuff out now. So y'all will be reached out to about setting up some dates where I can take y'all out there to tour the new station.
Any questions for Chief McCone?
No, I think it's looking great. I drove by on Saturday morning with a neighbor who just commented on it and said how great it looks. So
Look forward to the tours. You know, I love those red doors on the front.
Stand out.
I know, they look great.
Yes, they do.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Our clerk of court, Mr. Rados, up next. We'll get the update on that online credit card system I hear is
Yes.
running.
It's up and running. I think we're doing well. We've had some good amount of payments coming in so far. I am waiting on some marketing material to come in. So when that comes in, I'll put it at the window and hopefully we'll get the word out more. We've also done quite a bit of updating to the court webpage with a lot of information on there for the public as far as what to expect in court, jury trial information, pretrial intervention, and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that'll also get kind of people generated to look at the webpage. The only other thing that we've done to update you on is we've changed the juror summons to mirror the circuit court and magistrate court juror summons. The one that we had before was more like in a letter form, and a lot of people would call and kind of ask, it was a request, to come for jury duty. So now that it mirrors the same, I think people are more familiar with the form that they may have gotten.
Right. All right, any questions? Thank you so much. Chief Miller.
Mr. Allgood, Mr. Fraley. We're doing good on the budget on the end, from last year and also this year so far. Like I said, I haven't spent any money in the past 2 days. So really the only thing I have tonight other than the SRO agreement that's coming up, like I say, we just graduated 9 kids from the Youth Academy. It was fantastic. We had a lot of positive comments from the parents and also the students. I'd like to also commend and recognize several entities from the suspicious package that we had at Publix the other day. The officers did a fantastic job securing the area and getting Publix shut down. Captain Hodrea came out. He was the incident commander. Lieutenant Ross, she was there over all the officers, getting them placed where they needed to be. I'd like to thank the fire department also for having a fire truck on standby, EMS. And I called the sheriff today and expressed our gratitude to the Greenville County Sheriff's Office and their bomb squad. Also, I would like to commend Mr. Duncan. Once I called him and advised him what was going on, he shows up on scene, and it wasn't one of these, this is what we're going to do. It was one of these, what can I do for you? He got the officer's water and was standing by for news media and everything like that. So it was a great teamwork effort between a bunch of different entities.
Thank you, Chief. Most of y'all know, but note to self, if you drive up at the grocery store and there's 3 of your SUV police cars out front, it might be an indication you don't need to go into Publix and go shopping that day. So I hadn't made it out of produce department and this nice little lady came up to me and told me to leave my cart to exit the building, that it was being evacuated. Thank you, Chief. I also want to commend Captain Hadrea. He ran the team efforts. It wasn't shortly. I mean, I literally I got to my car and was going to go across the street to get my groceries and received a text, and Mr. Duncan told me what was going on. I said, yep, I know, I'm sitting here. I'm watching it live. And then a few minutes later, he sent me a text and told me that he was at Publix. And from what I understand, he stayed there the entire time. I don't know many city administrators that would jump in and do that. So thank you from myself, and I'm sure from everyone else. It's truly appreciated. And I know it wasn't about you that day. It was just, that's who you are and that's what you do. So it did not go unnoticed, unrecognized. So please share with your team. I have been told that it was a team effort, not only with the city of Mauldin, but with Greenville County and everyone else involved. So thank goodness it was a false alarm. The package did look rather scary, to say the least. So professionals doing their job and doing it in an excellent way. So huge shout out and thank you to all of those involved. Also, I wanted to mention Lauren, she got a press release out almost immediately on the situation. So kudos to her as well. And Chief, y'all had a post out almost immediately on the Facebook page. So that I think circulated pretty quickly and cut down on any rumors that was going on. Folks were notified and they knew exactly what was going on. So enough about that, but it was ended the way it needed to end, but we let folks know what was going on while taking care of business. All right, any questions or comments for Chief Miller before I move on? All right, we have no unfinished business. That leads us to new business. And if you turn to page 7 in your packet, is the Indigent Defense Agreement. There we go.
What I have before you is a shared service agreement with the 13th Circuit Public Defender's Office. This is a 1-year contract for the fiscal year. This was put together for Mauldin, Simpsonville, Fountain, Travelers Rest, and Greer. And the Public Defender's Office would handle any indigent defendants that were financially qualified for free attorney service for city level charge. As far as fiscal impact, the annual buy-in for us for 10,000 had been accounted for and included in the approved budget for this upcoming year. And with this, it does renew annually, but at any point we do have the option to cancel and not renew. And there will be a meeting with the Public Defender's Office in February to go over the numbers to make sure that everybody's where they are as far as their buy-in number. So nothing automatically rolls over without new approval.
Are there any questions concerning the agreement? Mr. Trailing?
Is this for us to move, you want us to move to council? Is this a,
Yes, so it would be moved to council signature. And the city attorney has looked.
Anticipating that next question. So would this be an agreement, Mr. Duncan? It would only be a 1 reading?
Yes, ma'am, that's
Counsel.
correct. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir, Mr. Allgood.
Thank you. Realizing that the contract states that it can be ended at any time, I was just curious as to why we have a May 1st date to review versus having that before the expiration date on February 28th. So this is on page 8, section 4, where it says that it will renew automatically on February 28th, but it will be reviewed on May 1st. I figured it should be reviewed before it.
I think if the public defender will obtain caseload numbers for 7 months and will provide that information to each municipality no later than February 20th. So they're going to give us those numbers for February 28th. And then on May 1 or sooner, the public defender and respectively discuss any adjustments. So it would not go into effect until July 1 of next year. But we will meet they will provide us with the numbers by the end of February. And then we will meet them on or before May 1st to discuss it. If there are any changes that would need to be brought before council for the new fiscal year contract.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to move this to full council? Sorry, I'll flip my page. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to move the agreement to fund municipal court attorneys for the 2023 to 2024 fiscal year to full council.
Thank you, Mr. Crayling. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Allgood. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of affording the agreement to fund the municipal court attorney for the 23-24 fiscal year, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a happy 4th. Okay, up next, we have the Golden Strip Career Center SRO Grant Agreement. We've talked about this in the past, so I'll let Chief refresh everyone's memory on this one.
Currently, we split with with the school district with the two SROs at the high school and the Mauldin Middle School. The one at the Mauldin Middle School, currently we have 100% grant for the Mauldin Elementary School, and the Bethel Elementary School for a officer in that school. Currently, the Gold Strip Career Center is covered by the road officers in that area. So typically when they have time through the day, a couple of times a day, they'll walk through the Career Center. We applied for a grant to put in a full-time SRO in the Career Center. It was approved, and basically it's just adding to the two that we already have. And it's 100% paid for by the state also.
Thank you, Chief. So I had to get clarification, so I will repeat what my question was, and it was confirmed. So the grant covers the cost of the SROs, which it currently covers for Mauldin Elementary and Bethel, correct? And then we're able to add the additional SRO to the Career Center via the additional funds to the grant.
Yes, ma'am. That's 100%. There's vehicles, weapons, everything's included in it, including their training. So any training that the SROs go to will not come out of the city's, or the department's training budget. It comes out of the SRO budget.
Any further questions? This is a goal that we've been working on since I've been on council. So
Got them.
yep,
Got 'em
in all
covered.
schools.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. What's committee's pleasure? Yes, sir, Mr. Crayling.
I'd like to move the full, make a motion to send to full council, the amended agreement for school resource officers within Greenville County to add one resource officer to the current position.
Thank you, Mr. Crayling. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Allgood. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of affording the amended agreement for school resource officer grant to full council, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Happy 4th to you and you. I miss Chief McCollum. Public comment. None online. See no one running up to the podium. Committee concerns. All right. What do we have on adjournment?
So moved.
Motion and
Second.
second. All those in favor say aye.
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 We stand adjourned at 6:49.
Saying the same thing. Ain't better to stay here. Cause I don't mind. If I stay up here.
Okay, it is approximately 6:50, and I will call the Building Codes Committee to order. All of the committee members are present. Is there any public comment? Okay, what do I hear on reading and approval of the minutes?
Move for approval is presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion, changes? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So motion carries. Reports or communications from the city officers, Mr. Deerhog.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'll give you just some brief highlights of our report from last month. We issued 490 residential permits this last month, which is the most that I'm aware of in recent history. And of that, 75 were new homes. So we're continue to see over the last few months that our new homes construction continues to keep going at a healthy clip. And then we also had, we welcomed 2 new businesses inside the city this last month, Committed to Home Care, which opened up on South Main Street, and What the Fin, which is a industrial site out on International Court. That's a report that I have for you tonight.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, we have no unfinished business. So we're moving on to new business regarding an annexation. Mr. Deerhall.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Duncan, if you'll pull up the display on this. So we received a petition to annex 16 acres roughly. That's shown in the orange hatch on the map on the screen. This is being requested to be annexed so it can be added into the Chestnut Ridge, Chestnut Reserve subdivision project that's going on right now. You can see this in addition borders another new subdivision project currently being constructed called Meadow Springs, which is turned actually into a rental community. But let me give you just a little background on Chestnut Ridge, if in case you don't remember where we stand with that project. So if you'll go to the next page there, here's a little timeline just to show you kind of how Chestnut Ridge has progressed over the years. The first section of that was annexed into the city in the first part of 2019. And then later in 2019, that first phase or first section subdivision was approved for that. That included 379 lots. Then in January 2021, an additional section was annexed into the city that included about 62 acres. In April of that year, the subdivision for that second section was approved. They reduced some of the number of lots in the first section. And so you saw a net gain of about 193 lots for that subdivision as a whole, which brought the total to 572. And then in October of that year, we annexed another 33 acres for this project that was referred to as Section 3. And in January of 2022, Planning Commission approved the subdivision on that project or on that tract, which brought the overall lot count up to 711. So as it stands today, right now, they're continuing to move forward with that project. The first phase has been developed now, and they are beginning to build homes on it. So why they have come before you tonight for this annexation is because they have an opportunity to add some land into the project. Now, this is going to be a little different than we're used to. Normally, when we see land added, that means they're wanting to build more lots. But in this case, actually, what they're looking to do is redesign the second and third section a little bit to give it a cleaner design. So what will happen is, as part of that design, they're going to actually knock off 4 lots. So we'll go from that 711 figure down to 707 if they get the new design approved for this for the sections 2 and 3. At the end of the day, we'll end up with a subdivision with more open space
and fewer lots than what's presently been approved. And that's what we have before you to consider tonight.
Thank you. So they're not gonna build on this, or they're not gonna build more?
They're not going to build more. They're basically going to stretch some parts of it out, work with the land a little bit better. And so they're going to work with some of the topography and other natural features on there to put a better design on the land. And the engineer is here tonight too, if you have any questions that you may want to ask him about it.
Okay. So it's 16 acres that they're wanting to annex in. And are they just spreading out the development?
Yeah, so if you go to the next page on the display materials, this is, I'll give you just a brief history here of how this project has looked. This is how it looked after Section 2 was approved. On this page right here, if you go to the next page, it'll show you Section 3, which was added to that. So this is what we have right now that's all been approved, sections 1, 2, and 3, which is the non-grayed out. Section 3 is the non-grayed out part. And so now if you go to the next slide, you'll see what they're presenting here. This shows sections 1, 2, and 3, but it's a little bit just more spread out
Okay, thank you. And
with fewer lots.
thank you. Any questions? Mr. Allgood?
Why would being annexed into this city change the amount of homes that would be developed on the land?
Again, there's just an opportunity for them to clean up the design and do some better design. So they're going to be dropping lots to improve the design.
They could still do that, still be county.
Well, for permitting sake, it's easier if it's all in one jurisdiction.
And I mean, based on everything, I mean, it looks like lots already been annexed into the city. So I'm assuming from a public works standpoint, we could still serve properly.
Yep.
See a head nod. So I like that.
Any other questions? Okay. Oh, okay. So do I hear a motion?
Moving forward to full council with a recommendation of approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor of moving this to full council, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, none opposed, so motion carries unanimously. Then we have one additional piece of new business, Mr. Deerhog.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. We have still have 2 openings on the Planning Commission right now. And we received an application from a former member, Mr. Raj Reddy, who served as recently as 2021. He is interested and has applied to come back on the Planning Commission. And so we have for you tonight for your consideration to recommend him for appointment to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Deerhog. Any questions? Previously, we would interview the applicant, but since he has already served on the Planning Commission, maybe we can just move this to full council. So if I hear a motion on that.
Madam Chair, move we forward this to full council with recommendation of approval and forego the interview process based on Mr. Deerhog's recommendation of the applicant.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, committee concerns? Hearing none, what do I hear on adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All right. We are adjourned at 7 o'clock.
Cheat yourself, Diane. We're got done at 6:59.
Ms. King? Get my happy fourth afterwards. You'll give me my happy 4th of July after the meeting? Okay.
Call to order, Public Works Committee meeting for July 3rd. It is 7:01 PM. Everyone is here. Let's see here. Let's just go around to public comment. Is there any public comment here or online? No public comment. Move on. Reading and approval of minutes. What do I hear?
Motion to approve as submitted.
Have a
I'm second.
second. I have a motion and a second. All those, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. All right, moving on. Reports or communications from city officers. Mr. Fleeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's the end of the fiscal year. Came in real close in a lot of the departments. A couple went over. You know, sanitation, we talked about that for a month leading up to it. And as far as the next fiscal year, I mean, we're just a couple days in. We've only had to buy a few things. We're good.
The PD's got you beat. They haven't spent money.
No,
So he says.
we actually did have to buy a $700 generator today.
Ah.
One of the suite of services that we've added in the last few months is pouring curb. Stormwater is a very important thing. One of the easiest way to keep the stormwater off of people's yards is to keep it in the street and get it to the catch basins. Historically in the city, they wouldn't mill the roads before they repaved them. They just paved on top of them. So there are some older neighborhoods where the curb see this much of it. And so kind of as a proof of concept, we've got a very entry level, lot of manual labor kind of machine to start pouring curbs. It's kind of like a catch-22. It works well. It's a lot of work, but as second anyone sees us, they want their curb too. We did a number of residences last week, and the list of people who are waiting for their curbs is much longer.
I've seen, they have a machine though, in the future, if we wanted to, you pour at the top and it actually just, as you go. Doesn't it?
Yes. So the machine we have now, basically, we mix the mortar with water in a special mixture, by hand or with a old mixer that we have. And then we hand feed it into this auger extruder that pushes itself along as it lays a curb. I could imagine if I was to, look into the future, there's going to be some recommendation by the Public Works Department to invest in a curb machine.
That's where I was going to. I watched you guys doing that. Very impressive. I was like, I'm pretty sure there's an easier way to do it.
Just costs money.
Yes, yes. So that's why I was bringing that up. That looks really good.
Yeah.
Really happy.
We do it. We show that it works. We show that we're capable of doing it. We know it solves a problem. Next step is to get something that's commercial level.
And with it, careful, I don't think it necessarily solves a problem. It makes things better. Because sometimes it'll help. It may not solve.
Oh, yeah, I guess, there's always gonna be more rain than a stormwater system can handle, but it certainly appeases the general public.
Okay. Oh, please.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the one thing I had written out. Curbing looks really, really good. Is there any talk about, is there a list of like priority, or we just now, or staff just now starting to look and formulate a plan?
Right now, we're using basically, if you request, we'll do it.
Squeaky wheel.
Squeaky wheel. As there's more stormwater work in the city than we have time to complete.
Understood.
And so you make a request, there was significant rainstorms week before last. where we had, another 500-year storm. We're just going to call them Mauldin storms at this point. And, there was a lot of flooding on the people's property and, we identify possible solutions. And one of the ways is, we have catch basins there. We can put this curb and this can be a stopgap while we evaluate other options. It's just something that my street supervisor recommended a few months ago to give it a try. I trust him. We got the machine, started doing the work, and it's been successful. And I think it's just like a lot of the programs in my time here is we start small and we build.
Right. So just for an average yard frontage in one of these older neighborhoods, how many hours does it take to complete that curbing?
Like we did
That's
110.
great. I'm just curious,
Yes.
Michael.
So we did 110 Brook Bend today. That's when you go in, it's past the first cul-de-sac on your right. It's the lot that they shouldn't have built the house on. It was originally the drainage lot and house there. We did his whole front yard, started at 8:30. We're done so we did 3 hours to do his whole front.
Cool.
Both sides of his driveway from the drainage culvert all the way to the next house.
Man hours, that would have been 5 people for 3 hours or?
4 people today, 4 people, 3 hours.
110 bags of,
The mortar is what's killing us. We buy it pallets at a time.
With it, one other thing with the process too, this is new to them, so you gotta give people time to kind of work out the kinks and get it. So I wouldn't be asking for process times quite yet until.
Yeah. No, I mean, we've already gotten significantly faster than when we started.
Oh, yeah, I'm just saying, yeah, that's what
They should have seen us out of the gates.
I saw a little bit of hitting with hammers and stuff. I understand. That's what I was just saying, to give them time on the hours and even truth matter materials, because you might get better being.
Yeah, and one of the things is when we step up to that next level where we go from what I'm gonna say almost like a residential machine to a commercial, you transition from mixing bags to having a concrete truck show up and dumping, a properly mixed concrete solution right into the hopper. And then, you're going 80, 100 feet an hour.
Really. I guess, Mr. Reynolds, my point was, this is just another example of what staff is doing to mitigate, I guess, the stormwater issue. Again, I'm just things that you guys come up with in-house that are less costly than other options, without a doubt. So I just commend you and your staff for, once again, thinking outside the box and thinking of ways that we can help our residents, with these street flooding issues.
I was just laughing at, it was one of those where you go
So,
hours and he answered and then I was like, what are the man hours? He said, it only took 3 hours. But no, I appreciate, and to back up with what Ms. King said, we certainly appreciate turning over any stone, trying to find ways to help mitigate residents and then also look for ways to build a system long-term that'll be good for the city.
Just one little comment, on the trash cans this morning, going through, I don't know if it was a problem with the equipment or somebody was in a real hurry. I noticed the trash can would start in one place and end up on other places in the yard.
We have a new driver.
Okay. I didn't know, maybe it was getting stuck.
No,
equipment-
and things may or may not work out for that new driver.
I was just gonna say, if it's that, it might just be, slow down a minute. I understand you're trying to get through things.
Yeah.
In front of my house, we went from near the mailbox over to Dave's house beside me.
We had a
So-
meeting with him at lunchtime about some things like that. Yes.
Not trying to complain. I understand, new thing, new driver, get used to stuff, but
Yeah.
I don't mind walking a couple extra feet, but I just want.
No, but the good thing though is I can say that for the first time and I'd actually have to go back and look, but we've now filled every vacancy in the sanitation division.
Oh, good.
Think in 3 years, give or take. So now we actually have the luxury of being like, just not working out. It's time for, you know.
Understood. All I have. All right. All right, going on, new business, or no, there unfinished business, there is none, so let's go on to new business, resolution 7/2023, sale of fixed assets.
Yes, so basically what I have before you is an authorization to, request, to go to city council to authorize Public Works to list and sell the old and used equipment through the Gov Deals system that we have. Decision was kind of made among, department heads, city administration, that the sale of old equipment and everything would just be centralized through Public Works. So, the list you have in front of you is actually fire and police vehicles and a couple of recreation. Okay. Okay, sorry. You know, all of the vehicles are maintained in our enterprise asset management system. Curtis Broughton, who is the asset manager, we stay on top of all of these vehicles. We have all the information. It really just made more sense for this just to kind of be coordinated in one place than haphazardly around the city. So moving forward, whether it be equipment or vehicles, it's going to come from me through this committee, through the council to get the resolution for sale of city equipment.
It's just following standard process, like we.
Well, before it was, everyone just sold their own.
I'm saying, but you're doing it, but we're still following the same process.
Oh, absolutely. We follow the rules.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make the motion to forward to full council resolution 7-2023 for the sale of old and or damaged equipment.
A motion,
Second.
second, any discussion? All right,
Never been so happy to see some of these Crown Vics on the list.
They
Little
should list the
plastics.
mileage on them. That was the only thing. I saw the VIN number. I was like, no, I want to know the mileage.
All right, no, any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, like sign, ayes have it, moves to full council. All right. GLDTC 61201 agreement.
What you have in front of you is the authorization to, or a request to authorize the contract with Greenville Legislative Delegation Transportation Committee as part of the Municipal Match Resurfacing Program. Historically, we've done this later in the year. They've kind of changed their process and wanted everything signed early on rather than later in the year. Because I think we just signed the one for the previous fiscal year a couple months ago. So it's the same spiel. You know, we've budgeted $395,974. Our match is $189,996. We are using that to pave the next approximately 2.06 miles, just following along that 5-year paving plan that from the IMS report that we did back in 2021. Any questions? I'll let you know.
Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to forward to full council with a recommendation of approval, the authorization of contract with GLDTC 612.01 as a part of the Mauldin Municipal Match Resurfacing Program. The financial impact is $390,974. Half of that is coming from the GLDTC funding.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor, no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, the ayes have it. Move forward. Mr. Freeman, do you have a button that make sure thing maybe looks different on you?
Y'all know I do not have a poker face, so.
Yes, when I see a face like, oh, I'll just stop
Yeah.
and wait for it to interject.
All right,
Not moving though, it's just like making these quirky sounds. It's all good. It's all good.
yeah, it's just breaking it in.
And I'm trying to like get used to, yeah.
My chair is delightful, so
So's mine.
no complaints over here.
Yeah.
Not complaining. I'm just like on guard.
Janitorial services.
All right, what you have before you is authorization to execute a contract with Service Master Clean for the cleaning service to include the Cultural Center and City Hall. Through the years, city's done a number of different options, hiring people, contracting, you know, public restrooms, cultural center, city hall, et cetera, et cetera. we had one full-time staff position and one part-time staff position that was currently, was in charge of the cleaning operations. Public Works, well, the part-time employee retired and left, the full-time employee is transitioning over to the police force, so it seemed like a perfect time to forego those positions. Put it out, you know, the professional service contract out, bring in a couple bidders, walk them through the facilities and tell them what our expectations are and see what we got back. The economics of it certainly seemed to work out. And subsequent to me putting together everything and bringing it to you, the recreation department contacted Seth and I and asked that we didn't have enough time for them to get out of their contract because they're going month to month. And then if we like the work that they're doing here, then the senior center and sports center would all be under the same umbrella as City Hall and Cultural Center. I know, then we'd have one citywide universal contract for cleaning services.
Just singing my tune.
It's like a broken record sometimes with me, I know.
Any questions?
Was this the only bid that you received back? or-
No, no,
Okay.
we
So just-
solicited, we've got the three, scored them and
With me.
most responsible, checked references.
Mr. Chairman, if I might add, so this would be, as Mr. Freeman said, in lieu of those two positions. So when we do our budget modification at some point this year, we'll move that from the salary line item into the professional services line item to adjust accordingly, should committee and then council agree to this change.
Bless you. All right, any more discussion?
Not for me.
All right, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the contract with Service Master Clean for cleaning services to include the Cultural Center and City Hall as proposed in our packet. The financial impact associated with this will be about $4,705 a month. This will be Public Works will be forfeiting one full-time position and one part-time position for cleaning services. Sorry, that's all.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? With that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Ayes have it. Mr. Full count. All right, Whispering Oaks Road Acceptance.
Yes, so at the last city council meeting, if you remember, the members from the community came up and spoke about their roadway. They submitted to Public Works a formal request to have their roadway entered into the city's roadway inventory. What you have before you is a copy of that request from the homeowners association. In the document, I provided some background of the, Endeavor Circle, Whispering Oaks development. In it, I note that the roadways were constructed as private driveways, which means that they didn't meet the construction standards of city roadways. They're, we have specifications that require subgrade of clay or stone and binder and surface and different thicknesses, none of which apply to the construction of the roadways. Now, the crux of the request is that the city's sanitation vehicle leaked hydraulic fluid and destroyed their road. We went out, we actually, in different locations in our parking lot of Public Works, we leaked hydraulic fluid in test scenarios and tested different cleaning products and found the most successful. That's a product that we went out to Whispering Oaks and we cleaned the road back. Since that time, the stain has faded significantly to the point where it's not this horrible situation that they may have led you to believe last month's council meeting. We went out, we tried to replicate some of the statements made by members about being able to scoop out asphalt with a spoon and, none of which could be replicated. The competency of the roadway is, just in my opinion, not compromised in any way. That being said, they still requested that they don't want to be responsible for their roadway. They want the city to take over as I've indicated in this write-up, the road doesn't meet our specifications. It's, and correct me if I'm wrong, not only would we, in order for us to accept it, there would have to be a separate variance to our specifications granted by city council.
Everybody seems to be looking at you, David.
Typically, you would do a variance upon initial approval of a project or of a roadway. So this, I think if the city accepts it, it's an implied variance, if it were to accept it. I don't think you would need a separate, like, we accept, but then we don't grant a variance. That wouldn't make sense. So, but I'll let Mr. Deerhog speak to it.
Yeah, that's, I guess an interesting question. I've never seen it done before where you would do a variance like that. That's not really in the spirit of issuing a variance. Like Mr. Duncan said, that's typically done for you, do something. I guess with this situation, if you were to entertain taking it in, the thing that we would have to figure out is when that road needs maintenance, what standards are we going to maintain it to? Because it doesn't meet the standards now. So there's a whole lot of questions like that the city would have to figure out if you all were to entertain taking it. One of the other issues is they don't have enough right of way or don't have right of way provided to it. So is the community willing to give chunks of their yard up so that there is the right of way width required? Those are all things that someone would have to figure out.
Get to it, but I appreciate that. And the last part of this was, I didn't even think about that, is that, you know, what standard would we hold it to in repairs? In the financial impact of this, my mentality was, we want to, if we are going to do
Standard.
we want to bring it back to the standard. So to bring it back to the standard, we would have to do CMRB, which is a concrete mixed base reclamation method. You guys have seen it through the years on some of the roadways. And you know, and that's the cost to do that one little section of road is approximately $143,000 using current GLDTC prices, which by the time we actually get out there would be significantly.
Mr. Chairman, how many townhomes would you say we have currently that we own the roadway in? That would be in our inventory?
Not in there. It's
Didn't see it.
it's 59.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. How many other townhome communities would we already have in our roadway inventory?
How many townhome communities do we have in our roadway inventory? It just depends on how they construct their roads. You know, if they have roadside parking, you know, that precludes them. So you know, there's a lot of townhomes that have been constructed or continue to be constructed. And I'd almost say
That are privately held, responsible by the HOA, correct?
Yeah, the
That's what I-
majority of townhome communities all have private roads.
That's where I was going with that is
There may be one or two out there, but it's not many.
the reason that was constructed this way is right-of-way issue and trying to cram as many townhomes on the property as the city would let them, which cuts out how many townhomes you can put on there and et cetera, et cetera. So,
Plus, correct me if I'm wrong, the spec, the city spec is significantly higher than what they had to build to.
yes. And the city spec is just the county standard.
The action here is for discussion, correct?
I'm making no recommendation.
I mean, this is for
I
discussion.
don't really want to tell you what to
Yeah.
do.
Mr. Chairman, yes, this was just for discussion purposes tonight.
So
we have a certain amount of time that we have to, I mean, they've put in an official request. Is there some amount of time that we have to respond or?
No, sir, it's at the committee and the council's pleasure. So we get different types of requests all the time, but there's no time limit set for those requests.
My notion, The only commitment I will make is I will drive out there because I have not done that. Just take a look.
Mr. Chairman, what we could do is, it sounds like we're gonna kind of just hit the pause button on this item. We could bring it back up next month. And if the committee then wants to forward it to council for discussion or for denial to give a response, we could at that point.
I'm certainly willing if you're wanting to take the time to go out there and
Yeah.
put your eyeballs on it yourself.
Fairness, I should have already done this. I just haven't had time.
I agree, Jason. You should have already done this.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, on that, all right, now let's move to the next. Public comments. Are there any public comments here? I don't believe so on. Old man in the back there, that's a comment.
Terry Merritt, currently mayor of 214 Fairfield Drive, Mauldin, South Carolina. Just a couple of things, maybe our administrator can get with Mr. Friedman and find out. I'm a little bit confused on. We talked about pouring new gutters. Are we doing gutters on any street residents that request it, such as those with rolled asphalt sides and doesn't have any what I call curbing, existing concrete curbing? Or are we just taking requests for those that want their curbing at the higher level since the roadway was poured up to the point that it doesn't have the full depth of curb or gutter? So that was my question. I wasn't sure when the discussion was on, we're pouring gutters now, are we putting gutters on streets that never had gutters?
So not commenting, these are curbs, not gutters. There's a difference.
Curbs. All right, let's call them curbs.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So are we putting curbs? So everywhere I said gutters, put it curbs. Misspoke. Okay, that was one question. Then the second question that came up, I believe we entertained a few years ago that as we would do future paving, when we did that survey with that company, that we would grind and pave. So we're not just paving over the top anymore. Hopefully that's still the case, that we are grinding before we pave, such as we did on Hyde Circle. So there's the two areas that I was somewhat confused on. May have confused y'all with my term of gutters. So if y'all could just let me know back, doesn't have to be tonight unless he wants to talk. Thank you.
Certainly speak to it. So in typical roadway construction, the curb is the vertical portion that extends above the roadway. The gutter is the portion, the area next to it that conveys the water. We are only pouring curbs. So we don't have the capability to pour the rolled curve that you see in the new developments. We can patch those, but our curb machine just actually makes the old style square curbing. With the exception of one lot in Knollwood. It's always the case in Knollwood. Every curbing location that we've done has been raising the existing curbing back to an acceptable standard above the roadway. There was one house in Knollwood that was just concerned about the roadway drainage coming off and into their property. And so we just did a curb along his road frontage. It's on the left-hand side. I don't have the address in front of me, but when you turn down Knollwood by the dollar store, it's like the third one on the left, third or fourth one on the left. But yes, and then the other thing was for paving, in the 4 years that I've been here, we have diligently ensured that every time we do a new roadway, the previous roadway surface has been removed, milled down, and repaved to the existing height prior to milling activity.
While you're front and center, I've got a quick question, kind of as a tangent from that, that I was going to ask during committee concerns anyway. So maybe 3+ years ago, when we were talking about repaving and roads, there was a study done that said that we could, and I will butcher this, I don't know the terminology, but basically we would take like a tar substance to fill in the cracks
Mhm.
in the roads. Are we doing any of that now?
Yeah, so,
Okay.
it was 2021, I believe, when we got the crack filling machine. We crack fill in the fall and winter time, just because you've been outside in
It's a little warm.
a little warm, and what happens is that when tires, that tar material, it goes in hot and cools down. We have 90+ degrees with asphalt, it's easily 150 degrees on that roadway surface. When tire tracks go over it, it peels out. So the installation of it is only during the cooler periods of time. In the weekly updates, during those periods of time, I always summarize the limits. We also maintain it in our database system.
I was just recently traveling. I was on a road and it almost looked like little bit like black snakes everywhere because it'd been so, it made me think about, yeah, the roads that we were doing that to because it was obviously affected. So
Yeah,
thank
so we did a lot.
I'll look for that in the fall report.
Yes, or if you wanted to, you can, to see some of our work, you can go into Planters Row, Oak and Pine, which is the pine forest by Pine Forest Park, that we did that entire neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification on curb and gutter. So anyone who has applied for a encroachment variance for driveways and sidewalks will know very intimately the difference between a curb and gutter if you've done that within the city of Greenville at any point ever. And I'll keep my words parsed there.
All right. I think we're good here. And on that note, I will state that my great grandmother, before she passed in her 90s, was driving and she just basically relied on the curbs and the gutters
Cars.
to get around to make sure she didn't wreck her car. So that's why I'm familiar with them. It's not from the engineering. Cool. So, and on this, I do want to make a quick comment on this. As it's public comment, we're not supposed to respond back and discuss. So may exception here, but in the future, we'll. All right, thank you. Any other public comment? All right. Committee concerns. We're here an adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion. All those in favor say aye, or any discussion? No. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. We are adjourned.